Welcome to the deep dive. So you're curious about navigating all the rapid changes with artificial intelligence, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. We've pulled together some, well, really fascinating info, everything from how AI has evolved, the history,
Right.
to the nitty-gritty of generative AI, how fast it's being adopted, that's pretty wild, and also the anxieties popping up.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Totally. And importantly, what core human skills might keep us ahead of the curve. Our goal here is really just to boil this down, get to the essential
It's
insights.
the stuff you really need to know to figure out what's happening and maybe where to put your energy.
Exactly. We want to move past just the headlines, give you a solid foundation.
And hopefully equip you with, the knowledge to thrive in all this change.
Okay, speaking of change and speed, here's something to wrap your head around right at the start. ChatGPT. 1 million users. How long do you think?
Knowing the buzz. Maybe a month.
5 days.
Wow.
Yeah. We'll dig into how that stacks up against, the big platforms later on. It's
Yeah.
something else. Okay, so let's unpack this. To really get where AI is heading, it helps to look back, right? Where it came from. We've got a timeline, and it stretches back further than most people probably think.
That's definitely right. AI isn't, some flash in the pan from the last few years. The actual term, coined way back in 1955.
55.
Yep. And machine learning followed pretty quickly in 1959. Then you had the first sort of AI boom in the 70s. It's interesting how these things line up with other tech leaps, too.
It really does show how innovation sort of builds on itself. Our timeline hits the internet boom in the 90s, right? And big data popped up around then, too. Suddenly, there was just so much more information for these early systems to chew on.
Exactly. Fuel for the fire. Then came deep learning. That was around 2006. That was a real game changer.
Right.
Followed by the whole social media explosion, late 2000s, more data. Augmented reality was actually kicking around back in the 90s, too.
Oh, interesting.
And then, more recently, generative AI, sort of hitting its stride from 2020 onwards. It's been a series of waves, really.
Distinct phases.
And what's fascinating is how the approach shifted. We started with rule-based systems.
Yeah.
Think 1950s through the 80s. These were very explicit. If this happens, then do that. Very programmed logic.
Got it. Like a strict flow chart.
Pretty much. Then, 90s and 2000s, machine learning really started to emerge. There was a shift towards systems learning from data.
Okay, so less explicit programming for every single scenario.
Exactly. Instead of giving the computer like a specific recipe for every dish, you show it thousands of pictures of dishes, and it starts figuring out the patterns. Oh, these things often go together.
Right, learning by example. That sounds much more flexible.
It was much more adaptable, and that really paved the way for the deep learning revolution in the 2010s. Deep learning uses, well, much more complex layers of these algorithms, kind of inspired by how we think the brain is wired, actually.
Neural networks.
That's the idea, allowing it to process huge amounts of data and find really subtle, intricate patterns.
Which brings us closer to now. Mid-2010s, generative models start appearing.
Yeah. Now, instead of just analyzing stuff, the AI is designed to create new stuff. Text, images, music.
Like the things we're seeing everywhere now.
Precisely. And then late 2010s, early 2020s, we get the transformer architecture and these large language models, LLMs. They're the powerhouse behind a lot of the generative AI making headlines.
And the latest trend is multimodal, working with different kinds of data together.
Right. Text, images, audio, all potentially interacting within one model.
Yeah.
It's been an incredibly fast progression when you look back.
No kidding. So, okay, generative AI, it's clearly a big deal. But how does it actually do what it does? What's going on under the hood?
Well, at a basic level, it's a process. It starts with data preprocessing. You need vast amounts of data, text, images, whatever, and it needs to be cleaned up, organized, prepared for the AI.
Makes sense. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Exactly. Then comes the actual AI model training. This is where the heavy lifting, computationally speaking, happens. The model gets fed this massive data set, and it starts finding statistical patterns within it.
So it's like reading the entire internet and figuring out, okay, the word blue often appears near the word sky, or these shapes often form a cat.
That's a good way to put it. Finding correlations and likelihoods.
Well,
And after identifying these patterns comes the probabilistic data generation.
probabilistic. Okay, so it's about chances, likelihoods.
Yes, that's really key. It doesn't just copy-paste what it saw. It uses the probabilities it learned to create something new that fits those learned patterns. Take large language models, LLMs. They're trained on just immense amounts of text, and they essentially predict the most likely next word, or even part of a word, in a sequence. based purely on the probabilities learned from all that text.
We saw a great example. Like, if you prompt it with "I like," the model might calculate, okay, you has maybe a 38% chance of being next, and being might have 25%, and dogs maybe 10%, and so on. Millions of possibilities ranked by probability.
Exactly. And then if the sequence becomes "I like you," the probability for the next word shifts. Maybe always now has a 17% chance. It's all statistics learned from that huge data set.
Okay, so how do they learn these probabilities? What are the training methods?
Two main ones stand out. First is supervised learning using demonstration data. Basically, you show the model lots of examples of what you want. Like, here are thousands of well-written emails. Learn to write emails like this.
Learning by seeing good examples, okay?
The second big one is reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF. This one's really interesting. Humans look at the AI's output and give it feedback. Like, this answer was helpful, or this one was nonsensical, a kind of reward signal.
Ah, so humans are sort of guiding it, rating its attempts.
Exactly. The AI learns to produce outputs that are more likely to get positive feedback, or rewards, from humans. It helps align the AI's behavior with what we actually find useful or desirable.
So it's this loop: generate, get feedback, adjust, generate again.
Precisely. And the structure that makes all this learning possible, that's the neural network. These are complex mathematical models, loosely inspired by the brain structure. They contain billions of parameters or weights. Think of them like adjustable knobs.
Billions.
Oh, yeah. And these parameters get tweaked and adjusted as the model processes more and more data. It gets better at recognizing and generating patterns, like language. Of course, you need huge computing power and clever algorithms to make this practical.
Right. But here's the really fascinating part, maybe slightly unnerving part. Our current understanding, based on the sources, is that the AI, it doesn't actually understand the meaning behind the words or images it creates, does it? Not like we do.
That seems to be the consensus, yes. It's incredibly sophisticated pattern matching and probability calculation. It can generate text that sounds perfectly human or images that look real, but does it grasp the context, the subtext, the real-world meaning or implication? Probably not. Not in the human sense of understanding.
That's a huge distinction. It's mimicking understanding based on patterns, not truly comprehending.
Exactly. And that distinction has really big implications for how we use AI, what we trust it with.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about that speed again, the adoption rate. We kicked off with ChatGPT hitting 1 million users in 5 days. How does that actually stack up against other tech giants we know?
It's pretty stark when you lay it out. That iPhone, which felt revolutionary, took 74 days to hit 1 million users.
Okay, 74 days. Still fast, right?
It's Instagram,
Yeah.
about 2.5 months. Spotify, 5 months. Dropbox, 7 months. Facebook took 10 months to get its first million.
10 months for Facebook
Yeah.
and ChatGPT 5 days.
Less than a week.
Yeah.
It's just a different scale of initial uptake. Even platforms we think of as viral, like TikTok, took longer for that first million.
That really hammers home the current moment, but the next milestone is even more telling, isn't it? Reaching 100 million users.
Oh, definitely. The gap widens there. TikTok, super fast growth,
Yeah.
right? Took about 9 months to reach 100 million. 9 months.
Okay. ChatGPT did it in 2 months.
2 months.
Yeah, compare that to Instagram, 28 months. WhatsApp, 42 months. It's 3.5 years. Facebook, 45 months.
Wow.
Even the big streaming players. Disney Plus took 16 months. Netflix took 120 months. That's 10 years.
10 years for Netflix to get to 100 million.
So ChatGPT's adoption speed is just unprecedented. It really highlights the immediate appeal and maybe the perceived utility of this kind of AI.
It's clear this isn't just, another tech trend. It's something hitting differently, faster. But that kind of speed, that kind of disruption, it naturally causes some unease, right?
Let's talk about the anxieties people are feeling.
Yeah, it's perfectly normal to feel maybe a bit overwhelmed
Yeah.
or anxious. When things change this fast and this fundamentally, our sources kind of break it down into anxieties directed outwards about the world and ones felt more internally.
Okay, so externally, what are the big worries?
Well, a major one is definitely the fear of future irrelevance.
Yeah.
The worry that the skills you have now or the ones you're learning.
Might become obsolete because AI can do it.
Exactly. That fear that your job, your expertise might just be automated away. And then there's a more general anxiety about AI itself. Uncertainty about where it's all going, the potential downsides, the risks.
Right, the sort of what-if scenarios.
Yeah.
And internally, how does that manifest?
Internally, we see things like social comparison anxiety. feeling like everyone else is figuring it out, doing amazing things with AI, while you're just trying to keep up.
The am I falling behind feeling.
Mm-hmm. And also value confusion. Like,
Yeah.
what should I even be learning? What's worth pursuing when the ground rules seem to be shifting so quickly? What skills will actually matter in 5 or 10 years?
That makes sense. And it's interesting, one source points out how social media and all these quick summaries might actually be adding to the anxiety.
How so?
Well, you see snippets, headlines, quick takes. Maybe it gives you a surface level view, but does it help you really understand? Or does it just make you feel like there's this overwhelming flood of information you can't possibly process?
That's a really good point. It's fragmented. You might feel like you should know things, but the format makes deep understanding hard. And these AI algorithms feeding us content might just amplify that feeling.
Yeah, making it tough to know what's truly important or even what's accurate. It's easy to see how someone studying now might worry, like, will this degree even matter if AI can do half this stuff by the time I graduate?
That's a real concern being voiced.
Hmm.
Why spend years learning to write reports or analyze data or create images if AI can do it faster, maybe even better in some ways?
Exactly. It pushes towards bigger questions, doesn't it? What's my unique value? What's the point of striving if AI handles efficiency? What does success even mean anymore? Do you just opt out, lie flat, as one source put it, or find a new way to achieve?
These are deep, quite philosophical questions that this technology is forcing us to confront, individually and collectively. It's clear we need to think differently about our skills and our place in the world.
So, given all that, what are the essential human capabilities? The things that AI, at least for now, can't replicate. The skills that let us thrive alongside it. Our sources highlighted 5 key areas.
Right. The first one is learning agility. And this isn't just being able to learn. It's about learning quickly, being flexible, adapting your approach. It's also about filtering that flood of information we mentioned, and critically, forming your own interpretations, not just absorbing what's fed to you.
Being a nimble, critical learner. Okay, that feels crucial in a fast-changing world. What's number 2?
Number 2 is human connection. This covers things like interpersonal communication skills, but also, really importantly, empathy.
Ah, the human touch.
Exactly. This is where we have a distinct advantage. AI can simulate conversation, maybe even simulate empathy based on patterns, but it can't replicate genuine trust, understanding, rapport, the stuff that builds real relationships. The ability to truly listen, understand someone else's needs and feelings, collaborate effectively, these are irreplaceable. Building relationships is becoming even more valuable than just having information.
So active listening, empathy, collaboration, the things that require genuine human understanding. Makes sense. What's third?
Third is value positioning. This is about figuring out and articulating your unique value. What specific problems do you solve? Why are you important? It means focusing on real-world impact, not just knowing things. Being someone who contributes tangible value rather than just a generalist.
So less about knowing everything, more about knowing how to apply knowledge to solve specific problems?
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
It requires asking yourself regularly, what problems matter to me? What change can I actually create? And crucially, prioritizing action over just having ideas. Developing your personal why and how, that's your edge.
Being action-oriented and knowing your specific niche. Got it. Number 4.
Fourth is creative framing or creative interpretation.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It's about taking information, reality, whatever, and reframing it through your own unique perspective. Seeing connections others miss, interpreting things in novel ways, asking different kinds of questions. AI can generate variations on patterns it's learned, but that leap of truly original human-centric creative interpretation, that seems uniquely ours, drawing on our experiences, emotions, cultural understanding.
Thinking outside the box, basically. Bringing a human angle. Okay, and the 5th one. This feels critical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Number 5 is critical thinking, now more than ever.
Yeah, tell me about it.
It's the ability to distinguish fact from opinion or belief, to question assumptions, to not just accept headlines or trends at face value. It means asking, is this really true? Why do I think it's true? What's the evidence? It involves digging for original sources, being aware of manipulation, and actively practicing looking at things from different, even opposing viewpoints, resisting the echo chamber.
So, learning agility, human connection, value positioning, creative framing, and critical thinking. That's a powerful toolkit for the AI era. Now, we have to address the big question, the one that looms over a lot of these discussions. Is AI actually a threat to humanity?
Well, the consensus from our sources seems to be.
Yeah.
It can be. It definitely poses potential threats. But it's not necessarily a predetermined outcome. A lot depends on how we choose to develop it, govern it, integrate it into society. The risks are real, but potentially manageable.
Okay, so what kind of risks are we talking about? Are there different levels of threat?
Yes, the sources tend to differentiate between more realistic near-term threats,
Mm.
things we should be actively planning for now, and more speculative longer-term existential risks.
Let's start with the near-term realistic ones. What comes up?
Job displacement is definitely high on the list, particularly for roles involving routine tasks, data analysis, maybe even some creative fields, though it's always paired with the idea that new jobs will also be created.
The classic disruption cycle, but maybe faster.
Potentially, yes. Then there's misinformation and manipulation. Think deepfakes, automated propaganda campaigns. AI makes that much easier, much more scalable. That's a huge societal risk.
Yeah, hard to know what's real anymore.
Exactly. Privacy erosion is another big one. AI surveillance tools, if misused or poorly regulated, could drastically reduce personal privacy. We also have the issue of bias and discrimination. If AI is trained on biased data, it can perpetuate or even amplify those biases in its decisions in hiring, loan applications, policing.
Reinforcing existing inequalities, that's serious.
Very. And finally, autonomous weapons systems. Giving AI control over lethal force without meaningful human oversight is seen as a major, major risk if not strictly governed.
Okay, those all sound like very real, very concerning possibilities we need to grapple with right now. What about the more speculative existential stuff, the sci-fi scenarios?
Those generally fall into two camps. One is runaway intelligence, the idea of artificial general intelligence, or AGI, emerging. An AI that surpasses human intelligence across the board. The fear there is that we might lose control, and its actions could become unpredictable or harmful to us.
The Skynet scenario, basically.
Sort of, yeah. The other big one is the alignment problem. Even if an AI isn't necessarily evil, its goals might not perfectly align with human values. If it becomes super intelligent and optimizes for a goal that seems benign, like make paperclips, it might do so in ways that have catastrophic, unintended consequences for humanity because it lacks our context and values.
Optimizing itself right over us. Okay, that's sobering. But it's not hopeless, right?
Right.
The sources suggest we have ways to mitigate these risks.
Absolutely. Humanity isn't just a passenger here. The key is proactive governance and responsible development. Things like global collaboration on safety standards and regulations are crucial. We need international agreement on this.
Working together across borders.
Yes. Transparency is also key, knowing how these models are built, what data they're trained on, how they make decisions. That helps with accountability. There's also a big push for more research into AI alignment, specifically designing AI systems whose goals reliably stay aligned with human well-being.
Building safer AI from the ground up.
Exactly. And finally, public literacy. Everyone needs a better understanding of what AI is, what it can do, the risks, the opportunities. Informed public debate is essential.
So the message isn't necessarily AI is going to destroy us, but more like AI is incredibly powerful, and we need to be incredibly careful and thoughtful about how we build and use it.
That sums it up well. With proactive, human-centered governance and design, it can be an amazing tool for progress. The future isn't written yet.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've traced the really rapid evolution of AI, tried to demystify some of how it works, especially generative AI.
Acknowledge those anxieties that naturally come with such big changes.
Right. But also, hopefully, highlighted the enduring power of those uniquely human skills, the things we bring to the table.
Yeah, we saw that even as AI gets incredibly capable, our ability to learn with agility, connect with empathy, create unique value, think critically, and frame things creatively, those remain vital, maybe more vital than ever.
Definitely. So on that note, maybe a final thought for you listening out there. Considering this double-edged nature of AI, the huge potential for good alongside these real risks, what single human skill do you think will be the absolute most critical, the one we need most to ensure a positive future living alongside these machines?
That's a tough one to narrow down.
It is. And maybe also, what aspect of AI's development or how it's weaving into society? What are you most curious to keep exploring? Definitely some food for thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.